Chosen one, your awakening power has them shaking. They can't stop what's coming. Chosen one, they didn't break you. They forged you. And now, even your silence scares them. Welcome to the chosen bloom. This is more than a channel. It's a sanctuary for the awakened. If you're here, you're not lost. You're being called. Now even your calm, steady breath makes people nervous, the same people who once laughed at your quietness. They thought they were breaking you, but they were actually building you. Every insult and betrayal didn't end you, it made you stronger. The wounds they meant to destroy you with became the very place your power began. What they meant for harm, life used to shape you. They laughed while you were hurting. They cheered while you cried. They thought your kindness made you weak. They took your loyalty and used it to control you. They said your peace meant you were soft, but they were wrong. Because from the place they tried to bury you, you didn't just rise, you rose higher than ever. And now they're afraid. Not because you made it through, but because you're now untouchable. You're not cold, you're clear. You're not broken, you're burning with purpose. They said you were crazy when you started asking the hard questions. They called you difficult when you stopped letting them use you. They said you were arrogant when you started walking in truth. But what it really was fear. Fear of the fire in your eyes. Fear of how clearly you could now see through their lies. Fear that once you stopped needing their approval, they had no control left. And when you walked away without saying sorry, the fake story they built about you fell apart and they couldn't hide it anymore. Take a moment right now if something inside you is waking up. If this feels like the truth you've been waiting for, don't scroll. Hit the like button, subscribe, and comment 1111 below. Not just to help the algorithm, but to line yourself up with your purpose. Every like sends a message. Every comment sends a signal. This video isn't just for you, it's a message for every chosen one who's ever been silenced, buried, or misunderstood. This message isn't just words on a screen, it's a mirror. A reflection of everything you've tried to silence, everything you've endured, and everything you're becoming. You didn't stumble here by accident. You were summoned, called by something higher, deeper, louder than fear, and older than pain. Let's not dress it up with comfort. This isn't a pep talk. It's a war cry. And if your blood feels electric, if your soul is stirring, if something in you refuses to sleep through this moment, then yes, this is for you. Because you're not just evolving. You're becoming dangerously powerful and they feel it. Not the world as in everyone but them. The ones who once whispered your name in poisoned rooms, who built narratives to contain you. They're afraid. Not of your volume. Not of your hands. But of your presence, your fearlessness. Because you no longer beg. You no longer shrink. You no longer negotiate with your worth just to keep fake peace. You are the peace now. And that unsettles everything built on your silence. You're not afraid of losing them anymore. You're only afraid of losing you. That's what makes you untouchable. They once kept you tethered by guilt, doubt, emotional manipulation, a leash disguised as love. But you cut the cord. Remember how your compassion became their currency? Every time you gave more than you had, they took. Every time you stayed silent to protect their comfort, they advanced. They told you to be humble, soft, invisible, while they robbed your voice and called it balance. But they never imagined your silence would become a storm. And now look at you. Not louder, but clearer. Not angry, but focused. Not detached, but free. You are unavailable for chaos. Immune to empty attention. Unshakable in what you know. You once feared confrontation. Now your presence is confrontation. You once begged for a seat at their table. Now you walk like someone who remembered you were never meant to sit there. You were born to build your own throne, and this throne, it's not gilded in gold. It's forged in fire, built from every scar they gave you, every betrayal that became a boundary. It's shaped by the nights you wept yourself back to life, and crowned by all the goodbyes that didn't end you, but finally freed you from the weight you were never meant to carry. They hate it. They hate that the power you now carry was born from the very trap they set for your downfall. That the stones they hurled in cruelty became the very foundation beneath your feet. That the betrayal they weaponized became the architecture of your breakthrough. What rattles them most? It's not just that you survived, it's that you resurrected. And not just back to life, but back with vision, back with clarity, back with a stillness they cannot manipulate. You terrify them not because you became someone else, but because you refused to become what they tried to make you. You didn't bend. You didn't break. And that is what haunts them. But here's what truly seals your transformation. You no longer care to be understood. That's the final level, the highest frequency, because when your inner peace roars louder than their lies, their access dissolves. Their power evaporates. Their manipulations shrivel into dust. You're no longer reachable by guilt, no longer dance for crumbs of validation. You have detached from the performance. You've grown beyond begging. You've made peace with being misunderstood, being labeled the villain, because you've chosen to be the hero in your own unfolding story. You're no longer waiting to be seen. You are the revelation. Not angry activated, not chasing justice, embodying alignment. And the universe? It's not watching passively, it's pulsing through you, speaking through your stillness, moving in lockstep with your energy. You're not raising hell anymore, you're raising your frequency. While they scramble to understand how the puppet became a prophet, you walk in quiet authority. You've risen above the noise. The silence they once interpreted as your defeat has become your sharpest blade. Your distance is no longer absence, it is presence in its most powerful form. Your energy doesn't enter rooms. It transforms them. And now, they can't touch you because you finally remembered who you are. Your evolution? It's ungovernable. And every time you rise, without retaliating, every time you level up in silence, you confirm what they fear the most, that you've become a storm, unpredictable, untouchable, unstoppable. You no longer need to clap back because your very becoming is the loudest response. You're not proving a point. You are the point. So, stay with me now, chosen one. Don't scroll. Don't drift. Because what you just heard, that was only the trailer. The warning shot. The surface ripple of something much deeper. What's coming next? It's not just a message. It's a revelation. A reckoning. A sacred unveiling of everything they hoped you'd never see. Everything they prayed you'd never become. Because now the real picture is beginning to emerge. And if you're still here, if your spirit is still leaning in, it means you're ready. Ready to go step by step, truth by truth, into the core of why your presence is causing tremors in spaces built on lies. This isn't just a rise, it's a reckoning. So let's make this sacred. Drop 7-7. In the comments, if you're ready to embrace your isolation, not as a curse, but as the foundation of your transformation. And if this message is igniting something real, consider blessing the team with a super thanks. You're not supporting a video. You're fueling a movement, one that speaks to every soul who's ever been silenced, shamed, or overlooked. Now, let's break this open. piece by piece. Because if you're truly chosen, if something ancient is stirring in your bones, you won't want to miss a single breath of what's coming next. This isn't content. This is confirmation. And by the time we reach the end, you'll know exactly why your fearlessness makes them tremble and why your power can no longer be ignored. Let's begin. Number 1, they didn't call you dangerous because you shouted. They called you dangerous the moment you stopped apologizing for your power. They were never afraid of your rage. They were afraid of your clarity. They never feared your flaws. Let's start there. They were never shaken by your mistakes, your doubts, or your uncertainty. In fact, they were most comfortable when you were contained, soft-spoken, second-guessing, quietly asking permission just to exist. You were easy to manage when you questioned your own voice. You weren't a threat when you didn't know your worth. But everything changed the moment you stopped apologizing. The moment you stopped shrinking to fit their comfort. That's when they got nervous. Because when a chosen one wakes up, truly wakes up, they become unpredictable. And unpredictable means uncontrollable. It's not your rage they fear. It's your remembrance, your clarity, your wholeness, your refusal to beg for belonging. That's when they called you dangerous. Not because you're reckless, but because you're awake. Because you no longer carry your truth like a secret, but wear it like armor. You stopped sanding down your edges to make others feel safe. And when you did that, when you whispered no more and meant it, they lost control of the narrative. You took the pen back, and they couldn't stomach a version of you that didn't ask for approval. Your power was never in being liked. It was in being aligned. But they tried to twist it. They tried to convince you that confidence was arrogance, that your independence made you combative, that your clarity was ego. But let's shine light on the truth. They only loved your humility when it served their hierarchy, when your softness kept you compliant, when your silence held up their story. Now you're speaking. Now you're standing. Now you're walking like someone who's not afraid to be misunderstood. And suddenly, their compliments have turned to caution. Their praise has curdled into panic. But don't mistake that fear for spiritual discernment. It's not holy. It's not wise. It's exposure. Emotional exposure. Because when you stopped playing small, they had to confront the lie that their power ever came from anything real. You've become the mirror they can't escape. Your presence reflects everything they've been avoiding in themselves. And when someone thrives off control, your freedom feels like chaos. When someone survives by manipulation, your truth sounds like rebellion. They didn't label you dangerous because you hurt them. They called you dangerous because you healed without them. That's what broke the illusion. That's what rattled the system they used to keep you small. Let's ground this in truth. Look at history. Every revolutionary, every chosen one who dared to walk in divine assignment without apology was first demonized. Nelson Mandela was labeled a criminal before he was honored as a liberator. Malala was silenced before she became a global voice. Martin Luther King Jr. was called a troublemaker long before the world recognized the prophet in him. What did they all share? They stopped asking for permission to be who God made them to be. And the moment they did that moment of alignment, the system panicked. So if you're being called too much, too blunt, too confident, take that as your confirmation. That's the smoke that follows a real fire. That's what it feels like when you stop tiptoeing around your power. They were never offended by your confusion. They were offended by your clarity. Because control doesn't survive where there is understanding. It thrives in your guilt, your hesitation, your need to over-explain. That's why they wrapped you in contradiction. They told you, be yourself, but mocked you the moment your evolution began. They said, speak your truth, but only if it kept them comfortable. And when you changed, they said it like it was a crime, as if staying the same was more noble than growing. But let's be honest, they didn't want your light dimmed. They wanted it directed, contained, marketed, something they could handle and claim without being challenged. But you, chosen one, weren't built to be handled. You were born to disrupt. You were born to expose what's false and dismantle the systems that thrived off your silence. They were never afraid of you being wrong. They were terrified of the day you might realize you were right all along, that your knowing was sacred, that your intuition was accurate, that your fire was divine. You are unapologetic now, unavailable for their manipulation, immune to their guilt trips, and that's the most dangerous thing of all. They confused your depth for being too much, but the truth is, you were simply too real, too grounded, too free. You smiled without needing approval. You walked like you belonged. You let go with peace instead of chaos. And that's when they lost access. That's when you became untouchable. Let's be honest, you never raised your voice. You raised your frequency. And the ones who relied on your confusion to keep their control couldn't rise with you. So instead, they lashed out, called you dramatic, difficult, intimidating. But those labels, that's not your truth. That's the sound of their insecurity choking on your liberation. You're not dangerous because you're out of control. You're dangerous because you are finally aligned heart, soul, purpose. And yes, there will be moments when doubt creeps in. Did I go too far? Was it wrong to walk away? Was choosing peace selfish? Let me answer that right now, no. You didn't go too far. You went where they refused to go. You walked toward healing, toward wholeness, toward self-respect. You didn't abandon them. They abandoned truth. So when they try to twist the story, when they say you've changed, when they whisper, you think you're better, when they treat your boundaries like betrayal, remember this? You didn't rise to hurt them. You rose because their version of you was suffocating, and you chose to breathe. You are not the problem. You are the proof, the evidence that the universe doesn't make mistakes when it handpicks someone to rise from the ruins. And now that you've stopped apologizing for existing, for glowing, for growing, the room feels different, doesn't it? Their jokes don't land. Their tactics fall flat. The games bounce off like toy arrows hitting a fortress. Because you are the fortress now, built from every breakdown, every betrayal, every time you questioned your worth and chose to keep going anyway. You are not the storm. You are the aftershock of everything that was meant to destroy you. And that is why they tremble. That's why they whisper. That's why they plot. Because you didn't beg to be free, you simply became. You didn't ask for permission to rise. You just rose. So wear their fear like a crown. Let their gossip be your confirmation. Let their rejection redirect you, not derail you. Because a chosen one who no longer apologizes is a chosen one who cannot be stopped. Let them call you dangerous. Let them flinch when you speak truth with fire in your voice. Let them whisper your name with trembling lips. Because here's the truth, you're not dangerous to the innocent. You're dangerous to the illusion. And now that you've remembered who you are, they can no longer rewrite the script. This is your power. This is your awakening. And this is only the beginning. Because they can't cage what they can't comprehend. They thought they were breaking a person. But what they were really doing was waking a force. And now they panic. because what they once mocked is no longer manageable. You were never meant to blend in. And that's what they hated first. From the beginning, you moved differently. You saw what others refused to see. You felt what others ignored. And instead of honoring your frequency, they tried to flatten it, label it, contain it. But the truth? You were never built for boxes. You were wildfire, and they tried to trap you in a mason jar. They didn't understand your depth, so they dismissed your value. They couldn't interpret your boundaries, so they called you cold. They couldn't predict your movements, so they called you unstable. But we both know what was really happening. You were no longer programmable. You broke the code, the invisible script that kept you locked in cycles of people pleasing, emotional servitude, and false humility. You rewrote the pattern. You reclaimed your autonomy. And now, you are the glitch in the system they thought they could run forever. You're the awakening they didn't see coming. Now, you've become a threat not to people, but to every system that once fed on your confusion. Let's tell the truth plainly. They never respected you. They managed you. They studied your limits like a science. They watched how far they could push before you snapped, measured how much access they could gain through performative support. These weren't friends. They were farmers, and you were the field. They wanted the harvest, but never offered water. Took your light, but never gave shade. But the harvest? It's over now. The field is closed. The gates are locked. You've shut down every access point. You no longer hand out explanations like discount coupons. You no longer trade your worth for closeness. And that, more than anything, terrifies them. Because now, you've become a variable they can't exploit. You don't react like you used to. You don't flinch when love is withheld. You don't chase after ghosts wearing human faces. You don't enter rooms that insult your spirit. And the moment they realized they couldn't guilt you back into the cage, they turned on you. They had a blueprint for you? Be soft but not sovereign. Be humble but invisible. Be kind but silent.
But you?
You burned the blueprint. You shattered the mold. Independence. That's what they call it now, but let's go deeper. You're not detached because you're broken. You're detached because you've evolved. You've outgrown the noise. You've risen past the point of needing to be constantly seen to feel secure. And that evolution, it's not always loud. It often looks like quiet exits from rooms that once defined your identity. It looks like leaving group chats where your absence carries more weight than your presence ever did. It looks like walking away, not in anger, but in clarity. It looks like saying no without a paragraph. Like choosing peace, not the kind that pleases others, but the kind that shakes them. A glowing, grounded, untouchable peace. They look at you now still, steady, unaffected, and they call it cold. But it's not cold, it's clarity. You see through the masks, now through the fake praise, the passive jabs, the love bombing, followed by emotional starvation. You decoded the entire system and then you stepped off the board completely. Here's the truth. People who can't define you will always try to confine you. And when that fails, they slander. You've changed. You're too spiritual now. You think you're better. But what they're really saying is, I can't access you like I used to, and I never earned the access in the first place. So no, your unpredictability isn't chaos, it's sovereignty. You're not hard to love. You're just no longer available to be handled. They were only familiar with the version of you that was still under construction. But the one standing now, rooted, ruthless in self-respect, radiant in truth. And every time you choose silence over reaction, peace over performance, and alignment over approval, you're not just protecting your energy. You're reminding them without a single word. The grip is gone. The mold is broken. You're no longer theirs to figure out. It was never truly about understanding you. Let's tell the truth, it was always about containing you. Their comfort was never tied to your presence. It was tied to your compliance. As long as you stayed agreeable, moldable, quiet, and small, you were easy to love. But the moment you showed up in your fullness, expansive, intuitive, fearless, you became a threat, not because you were wrong, but because your presence exposed them. Your light revealed their shadows. You didn't suddenly become too much, you simply stopped shrinking. That's when the narrative shifted. That's why they twist your story now. That's why they gather others to co-sign the lies. Because control can't exist where comprehension fails. And instead of admitting they never truly knew you, they try to rewrite you through fear. But here's what they cannot touch: the truth of your design. Chosen one, they can distort the storyline, but they can't edit what heaven wrote. Your identity isn't up for public revision. Your script is cosmic. Your path isn't democratic, it's divinely assigned. And every time they try to limit you with labels, the universe just smiles, because labels don't work on flames. And your uncontainable fire, need proof? Look to nature. A wildfire doesn't ask permission to spread. A storm doesn't apologize for arriving unannounced. Lightning doesn't explain why it strikes. That's you now, divine disruption in motion. You move like a force, not a favor. You rise in unpredictable waves that wash away anything built on pretense. And no, they won't comprehend it. They'll accuse. They'll whisper. They'll project. But don't let that shake you. Because what they call chaos is actually your clarity. What they call dangerous is just the sound of your destiny unfolding. Their confusion? That's your confirmation. Their fear? That's feedback. Every time they scramble to label you, every time they try to shrink your brilliance into something they can understand, you prove one thing: they never really saw you. They only saw what they could use in you, what they could take, what they could benefit from while calling it connection. So, keep going, keep rising, keep shattering their expectations. Because nothing terrifies the counterfeit more than the real thing. And you, chosen one, you are the realest thing they've ever encountered. You're the one thing they can't predict, can't package, can't possess. You're not here to be processed. You're here to be present. And that's why they're losing sleep? Because you were never meant to be caged. You were born to burn through the limits, through the lies, through the systems built to keep you dim. And now, you are on fire. And you're never going back. If you're still here, you feel this. Like, comment, and share it with someone who needs this reminder. Now let's us continue. Number 3, your fearlessness is exposing their dependency. Let's call it what it is. They weren't loyal. They were leeching. You weren't part of their support system. You were the system. And now that you've unplugged them, they're gasping for a source of energy that was never theirs to begin with. So let's rip the mask off right now. Some of the people you called friends, partners, even family, they didn't love you. They fed on you. They didn't uplift you. They siphoned you. You thought the connection was mutual. You thought the loyalty ran deep. But the truth, the brutal, freeing truth, they weren't connected to you because of love. They were attached because of need. And now that the supply is gone, so are they. They never had power. What they had was access to your power. And the moment you pulled the plug, the lights in their little circus went out. Suddenly, the ringmaster had no show. Because behind the scenes, it was always you. You were the one answering the 2 a.m. calls, the one extending forgiveness before it was earned, the one sacrificing your peace just to keep everyone else emotionally afloat. And in return, they called you selfish for finally saying no, called you distant for guarding your peace, called you too much the moment you asked for mutual effort. But let's be honest, your fearlessness didn't harm them. It exposed them. It revealed just how much they depended on your constant self-abandonment. And now you walk away without looking back. No long paragraphs, no dramatic exits, no begging. And that is destroying the illusion they built around control. They were never afraid of losing you when you were still trying to earn your place. But now that you've found peace in walking alone, now that you've realized solitude is a sanctuary, not a sentence they're panicking, because the one thing they didn't prepare for was your detachment. They can't handle that your stillness is unshaken, that their tantrums no longer touch your peace, that their absence feels less like loss and more like relief. You are not cold. You are clear. You are not heartless. You are healed. And your healing? It's become their exposure. Look at every legend who became untouchable prince. Nina Simone, Muhammad Ali, Maya Angelou. All of them were once labeled difficult, dangerous, too much. Why? Because they stopped carrying dead weight. They stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't even offer a bandage. They stopped explaining their brilliance to people committed to misunderstanding them. And now you've arrived at that same place. You're not chasing closure anymore. You're focused on elevation. You've accepted that not everyone is qualified to sit in your atmosphere. And the universe? It's backing your decision with authority, clearing out the pretenders, closing doors with finality. Not out of punishment, but protection. The divine is whispering, leave them to their cycles, you've got galaxies to walk in. So keep going. Let them sit in the silence they once gave you. Let them feel the distance they assumed you'd never deliver. Because now, they understand the truth. They never had you. They only had access, and now, access has been revoked. If this feels like your truth, drop 1111 in the comments right now. Let's see how many of us are rising. Number 4, you don't need a crowd. Because you are the frequency. You're no longer echoing the room, you've become the sound. And the moment your silence started speaking louder than their noise, they lost themselves. They can't understand it. They can't compute it. They've never seen it before. Because in their world, power means being loud.
Power means applause.
Power means numbers, noise, validation. But you shattered that illusion. You didn't need to be heard by many. You needed to be heard by yourself. And now that you've found that resonance within now, that your voice aligns with your spirit, you've become the frequency that bends the entire room. Let's make something clear. Your solitude isn't loneliness, it's alignment. While they panic in groups, you find clarity in stillness. While they scramble for support, you find strength in silence. While they network for approval, you retreat to recalibrate with the universe, and that makes you dangerous in a way they were never prepared for. They sit in circles, echoing each other's opinions. You sit in your solitude and channel vision. They gather for a gossip, you isolate for transformation. Every time you disappear, they think you are losing. But the truth, you are multiplying, growing, downloading, upgrading. Every season you went ghost wasn't a breakdown. It was a divine upload. They don't understand why you walk differently now, why your energy walks into a room before you do, why your silence fills the air louder than their shouting ever could. It's because you are not seeking to match the noise anymore. You've become the frequency others have to rise up to. You are no longer here to echo. You are here to resonate. Think of people like Nikola Tesla, Lauryn Hill, Dave Chappelle. These weren't people addicted to crowds. They were addicted to clarity. They stepped back when the noise got too loud, and when they returned, the world had to shift around them. That's you now. You are no longer begging to be included in rooms that distort your frequency. You are the room. You are the wave. You are the vibration. And they hate that. They hate that you don't chase that. You don't explain your distance, that you find power in detachment, because now they know you were never the echo. You were the origin. You were the source they were feeding from while pretending to feed you. So when they say you've changed, take it as confirmation. When they say you've gone quiet, take it as a compliment, because the universe knows exactly what you are doing. You are calibrating, strengthening, refining, not to re-enter their chaos, but to rise into calling. Let them confuse your silence for defeat. Let them mock your isolation. Let them gather in numbers to feel safe, because you don't need. The crowd, you are the frequency, and when you move, everything real aligns and everything fake shatters. Number 5, you speak truth without permission. That's the real threat. Your voice was their greatest threat, not because it was loud, but because it was accurate and truth when spoken by the chosen. Doesn't echo, it cuts. You didn't destroy them. You didn't shame them. You didn't even raise your voice. All you did was speak clearly, and they crumbled, because when someone builds a life on illusions, the sharp edge of truth feels like a sword through paper walls. And that's exactly what you became, a walking, breathing contradiction to their carefully crafted lies. Your truth, used to whisper. Now it's surgical. You don't sugarcoat, you don't soften, you don't dilute your soul just to fit into their fragile narratives. And when you walk into a room, they feel the shift. Not because you're judging them, but because they see themselves in you, and what they see, it terrifies them. You are the mirror they can't look into without flinching. You reflect everything they're pretending not be everything. They buried everything they faked. You are not playing their game anymore. You are not laughing at their jokes, nodding at their manipulation, or staying quiet while truth dies. In the name of keeping the peace. That's why they're uncomfortable. That's why they avoid you. That's why they talk about you behind closed doors, because you became the one thing they can't silence. A truth they didn't authorize but can't unhear. And this isn't just emotional. This is spiritual. This is cosmic accountability. The universe gave you that voice, not for decoration, but for disruption. Your throat isn't just for breathing. It's for breaking chains. You're not just here to speak. You are here to shatter lies that have lived too long in the light. And no, not everyone will. Thank you. Ask anyone who ever dared to speak. The unspoken whistleblowers, prophets, poets, warriors from Malcolm X to Audre Lorde, they all paid the price for refusing to whisper when the world demanded silence. You are in that lineage now. You weren't born to be palatable. You weren't designed to be manageable. You were chosen to be unfiltered, clarity in a world drunk off delusion. So let them call you too blunt. Let them accuse you of being too direct, too honest, too much. The ones saying that are the same ones who needed you silent to keep their shadow safe, but you are done being the quiet one in the corner. You are done biting your tongue to protect people from truth they already know, but refuse to face. You speak truth without permission because you don't need approval to walk in alignment. And the more they try to twist your words, the more your presence undoes their performance. Your voice is divine evidence. Your honesty is the sound of chains snapping. And every time you speak, they remember not who you are, but who they're pretending to be. Let them squirm. Let them dodge your presence like a spotlight. Let them gather in corners to water down what you said. It won't work because the truth isn't an opinion, it's a frequency. And once it's out, it echoes forever. So speak, stand. Stay sharp because your words don't need to be loud. They just need to be real. And nothing scares a lie more than a voice that doesn't tremble when the truth needs to be told. That's who you are now, not the soft-spoken version. They could manipulate, not the polite soul. They could guilt into silence. You are not afraid of confrontation anymore because you understand. Truth is confrontation, and you've become the thunder that follows lightning. Let them deal with the storm. Number 6, you don't compete. You elevate in silence. They were playing chess, trying to trap your next move, but you weren't even on the board. You were building the entire game beneath their feet. They called it competition, but you never signed up. You weren't there to prove, impress, or perform while they strategized on how to outshine you, outpace you, outtalk you. You were in a different universe, building what they didn't even know existed. That's why they're bitter. That's why they talk, because no matter how loud they get, your silence keeps winning. They were racing shadows, versions of themselves. They built for applause. You were elevating in quiet where no one claps, but everything aligns. They were too busy performing to notice the ground shifting underneath them. And now that the fruits of your hidden seasons are starting to bloom, they're choking on their own envy. They can't keep up. Not because you are faster, but because you are free. You are not even playing the same game. Their metrics don't apply to your mission. Timelines don't shake your purpose. Their applause doesn't move. Your soul, you are in your own lane, and it's one they can't even locate. While they were watching followers, likes, and validation, you were watching spirit while they obsessed over image. You obsessed over impact. They crafted aesthetics. You cultivated substance. They built presence. You built legacy. And now you are untouchable. Not because you're loud, but because you are anchored. Every quiet move you've made, the late nights, the silent sacrifices, the uncelebrated decisions have built towers. No amount of noise can climb. You didn't need a mic, you didn't need a spotlight. You needed alignment. And now that you've got it, they're stunned. They thought you fell off. They thought you disappeared, but you were just upgrading in silence. And now you are showing up with receipts. Think about every iconic force, Beyoncé, Steve Jobs, Kendrick Lamar. They didn't flood the room with noise. They disappeared. Recalibrated, returned with impact. That's what you are doing. That's what you are. You don't chase trends, you transcend them. So let them play games. Let them study your old moves. Let them compete against versions of you that no longer exist, because by the time they finish watching your last step, you'll already be building something they can't spell, let alone replicate. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to perform to be powerful. Your elevation is not a show. It's a statement, and it says, I don't compete. I create, and what you create in silence will echo louder than their entire a performance ever could. Number 7, you set boundaries without begging, and that crushed their control. When you stopped explaining yourself, they lost their map. You were their blueprint, and the moment you built a wall, their whole world collapsed. They weren't just depending on your presence, they were surviving off your access. You were the emotional compass, the emergency hotline, the always available soul. They could run to vent, to dump on, manipulate, and then leave behind when they felt better. And the moment you said no more, they didn't just lose comfort, they lost control. Let's call it what it was. You weren't distant, you were drained, you weren't cold. You were correcting the temperature of a room that kept burning you. You weren't difficult. You were finally disciplined about your energy. They told the world you changed, but they didn't tell. The truth which is that you stopped leaking power where it was never respected because boundaries aren't cruelty. They're clarity. The moment you enforce them without guilt, no apologies, no long paragraphs, no soft landings, that's when the real shift happened, and they couldn't handle it because everything they built with you relied on your willingness to tolerate imbalance the moment you walked away without giving them up. Play. They were shook. Not because you left, but because you didn't beg them to follow. You see, they thrived when you were explaining your value, when you were making excuses for their behavior, when you were tiptoeing around their ego to keep the connection. But once that peace was more precious than proximity, the game ended and they lost. Think about it. When a strong soul sets a bound, weak ones call it betrayal because they don't understand relationships without control. They thought access to you was permanent. They thought they could mistreat you and still reach you, but you drew a line not in the sand, but in stone, and now they're banging on the walls hoping you'll cave in like before, but you are not folding. This time you've learned that not everyone deserves access to, or evolution, that your healing isn't a group project, that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's sacred. So let them tell their story. Let them spin their version. Let them cry about the new you because the new you. That's not a product of ego. That's a product of survival. You had to become this version to stop bleeding out in places that kept celebrating your wounds and the universe. It's backing every step you take in firmness, every time you enforce a boundary. It's confirmation that you are rising into your rightful identity. No longer reactive, no longer rescuing, no longer revolving around chaos. You are not rude. You are refined. You are not harsh. You are healed. So if they're uncomfortable with the space you've created, good. That means it's working because people who truly value you won't be threatened by your boundary. They'll be honored by it. And the ones who were there for control, they'll call it everything but what it is. Liberation. You are free. Now, keep it that way. Number 8, you are no longer available for emotional manipulation. You were once a sponge, soft, absorbing every guilt trip, every emotional trick, every tear. That wasn't real. But now you are a shield, and their games bounce off like pebbles against armor, forged in fire. They can't stand it, can they? That you've unplugged from their matrix, that the guilt no longer sticks, that the pity looks more like performance. That their emotional manipulation, the very thing they use to keep you small, confused, and compliant, just doesn't work anymore because you've woken up. You used to fold every time they cried. You used to chase every time they distanced themselves. You used to feel responsible for their moods, their pain, their chaos. They trained you to respond to emotional triggers like a puppet on strings. Say no, and they'd sulk, set a boundary, and they'd accuse you of being heartless. Speak your truth, and they'd spin it into an attack. And back then you believed it, but not anymore. Now you see the set of up before it even begins. You feel the shift in their tone and already know where the conversation's headed. You hear the subtle digs wrapped in concern. You recognize the, I've just been going through so much bait, and you don't bite because you've realized the truth. You are not cold. You are clear, and that clarity, it terrifies them. You use to carry their storms like they were your own. You used to confuse your empathy with obligation, but now that you've separated your compassion from their control tactics, you've become someone they can't use. You're no longer emotionally accessible to manipulation, and that has left them exposed, powerless. They've lost their favorite tool, your reaction, and you know what? Let them call you heartless. Let them say you don't care anymore. Let them lay you distant, cold, detached, because those are just the words manipulators use when their strings no longer pull you. You are never heartless. You just finally learn to guard it. You don't owe anyone emotional access. You don't have to defend your distance. You don't need to prove that your peace came at a cost because it did, and now that you've paid it in full, the toll booths are closed. Look at the greats open. Robin Williams, Chadwick, Boseman, all empathic, all generous, all shining lights, but every one of them learned the hard way. Emotional openness, without boundaries, invites, vultures, and you chosen one, have finally stepped into that sacred truth. You are no longer available for manipulation. Masked as misunderstanding, you don't negotiate with guilt anymore. You don't explain yourself to people who twist your words to suit their drama. You simply disconnect cleanly, calmly, permanently, because here's what they don't tell you. Peace isn't passive. It's a decision backed by discipline. You've become disciplined with your heart, and while they scramble to re-hook you with the same old tricks, the same old tears, the same old patterns, you are already gone. Not physically, maybe, but energetically. You've cut the cord and you didn't just walk away. You sealed the door behind you. So, stay in your clarity. Keep being the shield. Let them drown in the storm they created, trying to control you because the moment you became unavailable, you became untouchable. Number 9, you've become the storm, not the survivor. They prayed for your downfall. Now they're praying for shelter because you didn't just survive the storm. You became it. Let's get one thing straight. You are not the same soul who used to cry behind closed doors, questioning your worth, begging for clarity, wondering if maybe just maybe they were right about you. That version of you is gone, not lost, evolved, and what rose from that pain isn't some polished product for applause. It's a raw, refined, and unapologetically dangerous to anything fake, shallow, or manipulative. You are not here for revenge. You are here as proof that alignment beats approval. That silence speaks louder than screams that a soul in tune with truth can burn through every lie ever spoken against it. They thought they were watching your end, but really, they were witnessing your ignition, the part that terrifies the most. You don't seek permission anymore. You wait to be welcomed. You don't knock on doors that were slammed in your face. You walk in with your own blueprint because you realized you were never the guest. You were the architect. And now they see it too, that what they tried to contain, mock, and sabotage has become uncontrollable. What they called ego was your emergence. They mistook your self-respect for arrogance, your boundaries for bitterness, your confidence for competition. Because in their world, anyone who doesn't bend, break, or beg must be dangerous, and they're right. You are dangerous, but not because you are cruel. You are dangerous because you are free. You've become the storm, not because you wanted destruction, but because you were. In the middle of one while they gossip, you grew while they laughed. You learned while they tried to bury you in shame. You studied every shovel, every hand, every lie. And you remembered you didn't snap. You strategized. You didn't collapse. You recalibrated quietly, patiently, and now the ground's shaking under their feet, and they don't know why. You are the why. You are the consequence they didn't expect. You are the answered prayer they never thought would show up in the form of your power. And they know it. Every fake smile, every dry congratulations, every backhanded compliment. It's laced with panic because deep down, they realize they didn't just lose access to you. They triggered your transformation. They thought survival was your end game. They thought you'd just crawl out, cry a little, and disappear. But you are not walking in survivor mode anymore. You are the storm. Now, the one they can't predict, the one they can't prep for, the one that doesn't knock, doesn't mourn, doesn't ask. And no, you are not coming to destroy, but you will disrupt. You disrupt fake dynamics. You disrupt power games. You disrupt manipulation, double standards, emotional slavery, and all this. Systems they thought would hold you hostage forever. That's why you walk different now. That's why rooms fall silent when you enter, because your energy no longer negotiates. It dominates. You don't exist to be understood. You exist to shift atmospheres. Look around at every soul who's truly changed the world. James Baldwin, Rosa Parks, Nipsey Hussle, Frida Kahlo. They weren't crowd pleasers. They were catalysts. They didn't wait for applause. They moved in purpose, and the applause showed up late. That's your story too. You are not the survivor. That was just a chapter. You are the storm, the embodiment of every tear turned into thunder, every betrayal into lightning, every silent night turned into wind that now howls through every lie they told you are not here to be pitied. You are here to be reckoned with. So let them watch from behind glass windows, praying for protection from the very force they helped create. You are not of control. You are in divine motion. The universe has taken the pain they caused and weaponized it into precision. This isn't your comeback, it's your arrival. You've become dangerously powerful because you no longer ask if you are too much. You no longer lower your light to comfort the insecure. You no longer wait to be chosen. You remembered you were chosen all along, and now they finally see it. Let them run, let them rationalize, let them try to spin it, but it's too late. The storm is here, and it's wearing your name. And now we've come full circle. What they tried to silence has become the sound shaking their world. What they called too much has become unstoppable, force-chosen one. You didn't just rise, you returned in full power. You are no longer surviving, you are commanding. The storm is not coming. It's already you. If this message spoke to your soul, don't let it stop here. Like this video to fuel the mission. Subscribe to stay in alignment. Drop the number 77 in the comments if you feel your storm rising, and share this with another chosen one who needs to wake up.